Oh, you're that way.
I'm that way. I've been doing that. Good evening, folks. Welcome back. Hope you're all doing safe and well. Does that make sense? Hope you're all doing safe and well. It doesn't really, does it? But I hope everybody's fine, basically. We'll say fine. So tonight I have this young lady back with me yet again, Tracey. For anybody who's been watching us in the past, we have been covering the Tudor period. We covered Henry VIII, and then we did separate shows on all of his 6 wives. So tonight we are going to be talking about, well, we're going to be doing a few shows with this, but tonight we're going to be talking about 2 of the sort of main characters behind the scenes at Henry's court. Of course, one's Cardinal Wolsey, and the other one is Thomas More. And so I've got a wee bit up here about him. I might get it wrong, and if I get it wrong, then I do apologise, basically. But this lady here, she's on hand to, smooth it over. We're going to wing it, basically. Why lie? We're going to wing it and see what happens.
We'll just flag it. We'll be fine.
Aye. So I say Tracey's back with us, so I'll let her start.
Thank you. So as you can see, I've got a slightly different background tonight, as have you, haven't you?
I gave up with the virtual background. I kept disappearing. I thought, stuff it. But you're looking quite shiny.
Am I looking? It's very warm in Oxfordshire. I tell you, it's so clammy down here. It's that's probably why I'm looking a bit shiny. But I'm in a different background. I sold my house, it all completed, so I'm staying with my mum for a couple of months until my new build is ready. So hence the different background. But over my shoulder I have still got my crystal ball and my candle. You might be able to see them way off in the distance somewhere, but they are still there. But anyway, it's lovely to be back, and we are talking about our favorite topic, the Tudors, aren't we? So tonight we are talking about Thomas Wolsey. So before he was Cardinal, he was Thomas Wolsey. So I can start, and you feel free to join in, Scott, whenever you want to, and we'll muddle
I'll
through.
Just add a wee bit in. There's Laura saying hello there to the troublesome Tracey.
Hello, Laura. How are you?
And hello again to my dear friend Scott. I thought I'd say hello and good evening. She's a suck-up, basically.
I think she got that the wrong way round.
You think it's going to back to... I don't care, and I'll take that. That'll do for me. Good evening, Laura, dear. Hope you're keeping fine and well on this lovely July evening. You wouldn't think it was summer, but it's been raining here and all the rest of it. You know what I mean?
It's still hot here. I need a fan. It's still hot.
It's still warm. I'm still in the shorts on, but
yeah,
it's not exactly sunstroke weather. But, we'll wait and see what happens. The summer's not over yet. It's going to start sometime. Anyway, carry on, dear.
So the lovely Thomas Wolsey. So as we know, Henry VIII had very many advisors, but there were 2 that were very, very important to him to start out his journey. And soon after his coronation, he was aware of Cardinal Wolsey, who wasn't Cardinal Wolsey, Thomas Wolsey, because he was already working in Henry VII's court, which was Henry VIII's father. So we'll start with when he was very young. So he started from a very humble background. He's said to be a butcher's son. There's a possibility that his father could have been an innkeeper. They're not sure, but either way, he was from very humble beginnings. He was born in 1473, and he rose to prominence through education at Magdalen College, briefly staying in Oxford to teach. Magdalen College is just up the road from me. I know it very well. I actually worked there for a little while, and it's beautiful. It's got a beautiful deer park. So it's quite amazing to think that Cardinal Wolsey actually studied there and went there. So he was in Oxford. He had quite a good education, started to teach, so he stayed on for a little while. And then moving forwards to 1498. Now check me on my dates, Scott, make sure I get my dates right tonight. So moving forward,
I'll keep you right.
Keep me right. So in 1498, he was ordained as a priest at aged approximately 25. And he quickly entered the royal court between 1500 and 1507. And this was the court, as I said, of Henry VII, which is Henry VIII's father. And then obviously later, when Henry VIII took over, when his father had passed and he became king, he was very much aware of Wolsey. He had already caught the attention of Henry VIII because of his intelligence, his charm. He was very charismatic. He was very engaging, and he had a high standing in the church up until about the age of 36. So he'd worked his way up, and he was just very ambitious, and he got in with the right people, basically. And Henry VIII became very fond of him and used him as a sort of confidant. So in 1514, he became Archbishop of York. So
That's
he's working
Charlie
his
in.
way up still. And in 1515, he was appointed as Cardinal by Pope Louis X. So this was a really big move. He was therefore then connected to the Vatican. He was a devout Catholic, obviously, and he was given the position of Cardinal, which was a very, very high, still at a very young age. And then in between 1515 and 1529, he was Lord Chancellor of England, which again was really, really high ranking, a really high position. And the achievements that he had whilst he was in court, he attempted to reform taxation. He was very diplomatic. He was great for forging great diplomacy between Henry VIII, King Henry VIII, and all of the European leaders, because as we know, it was a very tricky time. But Cardinal Wolsey was very charming and was able to liaise with people, and they really sort of looked up to him, and they really took notice of what he said. And Henry VIII really took notice of what he said as well. So he achieved a great deal. And if you remember, when we talked about Henry VIII previously, we talked about the Field of the Cloth of Gold, which was a big joint celebration that thousands of people attended on King Henry the Eighth side, but also the French king. And it was to show good diplomatic relations between England and France. And Cardinal Wolsey was very instrumental in making sure that this happened. So he was really a really good diplomat for Henry VIII, a really good confidant. And he dominated over the English government from 1515 to 1529. So he was in the government for a long, long time. And because he was so powerful and because he was so close to Henry VIII, a lot of the Privy Council really didn't like him.
I was
They
just
really,
going to. I was
yeah, they
just going to say
really,
that he was very disliked.
yeah, he was really disliked. And he was very charming to the ladies, but men sort of resented him within the court. Definitely resented him. And he also amassed great wealth for himself. He didn't do things legally, he didn't put everything through the books, as it were. So he did, amass a great wealth for himself, and put gold in his own pocket, which people also noted. So obviously, people were whispering to the king about different things, and but the king wouldn't have any of it because he was, he thought he held him in very high regard. He was very, very important to the king, to diplomatic relations and everything else as well. So one of his dreams was Hampton Court Palace. So he actually designed and built Hampton Court Palace, which you will know about, Scott, won't you?
Mm-hmm.
And he absolutely loved this. He loved this. He designed it, he built it, he put money in it, probably ill-gotten gains from putting, lining his own pocket. But he built Hampton Court Palace, and Henry VIII, knowing that he liked to sort of rule over everything, wanted this for himself. So Cardinal Wolsey eventually felt obliged to gift him Hampton Court Palace. And this must have been such a huge blow to Cardinal Wolsey, because he'd put so much time, effort, and money into building over many years Hampton Court Palace, and then he ended up gifting it to Henry VIII because he knew that Henry wanted it for himself.
I think
So, but he always wanted to do things to please Henry, didn't he? So
that's it. I think as well. I mean, just getting back to you saying he was disliked by a lot of the Privy Council because, as you said earlier on, he was the son of a butcher. So,
yeah,
the Privy Council looked upon him as a commoner, that he wasn't born of, noble blood, royal blood, whatever you want to call it. So, therefore, he didn't have any. Because let's face it, Wolsey was the second most powerful man in the country after the king
He really
himself.
was. He really
And
was.
this really stuck in the crutch of the Privy Council because, you know, I mean, even they were all after scraps for Henry's table, basically.
Mm.
And then you've got this guy, Butcher's son, very well educated, highly respected, but in their mind, he was not of royal blood. He had no right to be there. And they're sitting there thinking, why is Henry listening to this guy more than he's listening to us?
Mm.
And,
That's right.
you know, and that did cause quite a bit of friction. And you even put yourself in Henry's place. He's got all his Privy Council there. He knows that they all hate this guy.
Yeah.
But then he's that fond of this guy. So I don't know, he must have been torn between both sides at some point. Or even though he was a king, he was a boss.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, he must have been right, you know, with the idea here. And as you say, Hampton Court Palace, Wolsey designed it, built it, you know, it was his dream, basically.
Mm.
And he ended up giving it to Henry.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Absolutely. And he was very driven, very ambitious. So he had worked his way up through the ranks. So rightly so, Cardinal Wolsey had worked very hard to get where he was, but he was incredibly ambitious and he knew how to mix with the right people to work his way up the ladder. So although he was very bright, very intelligent and worked hard, he was a bit of a schmoozer as well. You know, he kind of rubbed shoulders with the right people because he liked the notoriety. You know, he was a bit narcissistic. He liked, you know, people to look up to him and respect him. And back in that day, as we know, it wasn't really scorned upon for men to have mistresses, and Cardinal Wolsey was renowned for having, bless you, was
That was me. What was that?
That was Janet.
That was your daughter.
bless.
Sorry, folks.
And he was renowned for having mistresses, and one long-time mistress was Joan Lark, who he was said to have children with. And obviously, in this day and age, that would be unheard of for somebody high ranking in the church to have a mistress or even a wife or whatever. So he did, you know, get away with quite a lot. And he had quite a nice lifestyle because he was in court, mixing with all these people, lining his own pockets, was best friends with Henry VIII. So, you know, he was really lording it up, really, really enjoyed it. And as I say, women found him quite charming, but the men in court really didn't like him. He really did rub them up the wrong way. So it was quite an interesting time, as we know, during that time. And then, of course, the great question arose about the divorce of Catherine of Aragon. Now, this put Cardinal Wolsey in such a difficult position because he was a cardinal in the Catholic Church, a devout Catholic, and yet one of his great friends and the king was asking him a very, very difficult, or putting him in a very, very difficult position because he wanted him to talk to the Pope, to talk about getting divorced from Catherine of Aragon, his first wife. They were Catholics, so the church didn't recognise divorce. So this is where obviously the trouble began.
Mm-hmm.
So
This
it was. Sorry, carry on.
Do you think, you know, because as you say, he was quite ambitious, he was quite, you know, a ladies' man. Do you think that was partly to blame for his downfall as well? Because obviously, you know, he thought he probably could get away with anything. You know, plus he had the right hand, the right ear. What is it, right hand ear or whatever? He had the king's ear, basically.
Yeah.
And then, as you say, Henry decides he wants this divorce. Wolsey's the only guy around that can get it for him. And so it's going to stop him in his tracks.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, Wolsey was going to the Pope and sort of pleading with the Pope, you know, the king really needs this divorce, really wants this divorce. And it was just, no, this isn't going to happen. This isn't going to happen. And they held many councils, didn't they, where representatives from the Vatican came, and Henry VIII was present and Cardinal Wolsey was present, and everything that was put forward was no, this isn't going to happen. We are not acknowledging divorce. So it was really difficult. And as we know, in the end, Henry VIII, we talked about this previously, but Henry VIII broke away from the Catholic Church so that he could divorce Catherine of Aragon and he could marry Anne Boleyn, excuse me, because he really wanted that heir. He wanted to produce that heir to the throne, didn't he? So having the Pope having refused, Henry VIII became more and more angry. And in 1529, Cardinal Wolsey fell out of favour and was stripped of his office because basically he didn't give the king what he wanted. So he'd been a friend and a confidant to the king for many, many years. And at the age of 56, he was just absolutely stripped of his titles, which was so sad for him and such a blow for him. And he worried about his future, having seen what had happened to previous people in court, what had happened to Henry's wives, and etc. So he disappeared off the scene. And he became very ill and he became very weak and he was absolutely wretched with fear because he didn't know his fate. And he started regretting his ungodly ways. He started confessing his sins to God because he knew that he hadn't been a true Catholic, a true Christian in the way that he'd lived his life. You know, he'd been quite greedy and quite self-centered. So it was a very, very difficult time for him. And all of these monies and riches that he had suddenly were taken away from him. And then in 1530, whilst travelling to London to answer charges of treason, this is when he mysteriously died. Now, I don't know if you want to talk about this, Scott, but we really don't know whether he died at his own hand or whether he died because he was so fearful of travelling to London to find out his fate. But that's a bit of a mystery around his death, isn't there?
There is, as we spoke about this on other shows. There is kind of two different, as far as I'm aware, two different theories. You know, I mean, we've all seen the Tudors, and he's played by Sam Neill. He played, and you see him right in the Tower of London, and he cuts his own throat, basically. You know, and so you said, well, did that happen? Did it not happen? But no, it's quite a mystery of how he did actually pass away.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as you say, you know, he'd been sitting there, get stripped of all these riches. He feels the whole world's against him. He's lost the king's trust, basically. And he'd also have the Privy Council bearing down on him as well.
Yeah.
They'd see this, you know, right, this guy's in trouble. Bottom line is, let's stick as many knives in here as we can. So they would have been swarming around Henry, saying, you know, he's done this, he's done that. And then, as you say, he amassed quite a big wealth. Some of it wasn't illegal.
No,
so this would be seen as stealing to the king, which would be seen as treason. And then you'd Anne Boleyn in the mixture as well.
Yeah.
You know, because don't forget this, you know, you were saying, you know, he was back involved. This took over 2 years. You know, some people might think it was just, you know, a couple of months. But the whole back and forward between Rome and all the rest of it, it went on for over 2 years. And during that 2 years, people are watching. Because let's face it, the Henry's court, they were all backstabbers, basically.
Yeah,
they were all there to gain favour, as much favour with the king as possible. And so they're seeing this, you know, the top man here, the second top man, and they're thinking, he's on his way down, so what can I do to stick another knife
in his back? Yeah, I know.
And so how he eventually died, you know, there are the stories that he was very, very ill and he succumbed to his illness. And then there is the other suicide one, because we know that he wasn't executed.
No, that's right.
You know,
he didn't even get tried for his charges of treason, did he? Because he was kind of almost went into exile, didn't he, for quite a while whilst this was all being discussed. And then when he was going to face charges of treason and when he was travelling back to London, apparently this is when he died. And there's mystery around, you know, did somebody kill him? Did he kill himself? Did he die because he was so terrified of what might happen to him? And he was only aged 57. Which
was he poisoned?
Was he poisoned? Absolutely.
Because
yeah.
George, what I've read and what have you, these illnesses came on very quickly, and they took him very, you know, according to stories, it took him very quickly. So I think that's another possibility that maybe somebody was there to give him a helping hand, to poison him basically, and this is how he went downhill so rapidly. Because I think the majority of his life he was quite a healthy man. He was certainly a busy man, and I dare say he was unwell at the odd time, but the majority of his life he wasn't known to be sickly or poorly or whatever.
No,
and
that's
then
it.
after his fall for grace, he suddenly became ill. Was it, as you say, was it worry? Because let's face it, his head could have ended up on the block, same as everybody else's.
Yeah.
And with him being charged with treason, we all know there was only one penalty, there was only one sentence for treason.
Exactly.
I think this is why he gifted Henry Hampton Court Palace as well, because he knew himself.
He wanted to appease him, didn't he?
Aye, Wolsey himself knew, right, this divorce, I'm getting nowhere with this. And the king's going to fall with me, so here, have my palace. And of course that backfired on him anyway.
It's really sad in a way, isn't it? Because he'd worked his way up through the ranks. He was a really good close friend and confidant of Henry VIII. And then, as we know, Henry VIII could turn on a dime and just turn against people. And for somebody so important who had such a high role to then suddenly fall from favour, fall from grace, fall out of favour, it probably did make him very ill. He lost everything. He lost his title, his riches, his home. He had to leave the area. So it probably did make him ill with the stress and the worry of everything, didn't it? Knowing how his life had been and how it was going to be in older age, later in life.
You just kind of went. And then the other question is, does this give us an insight to, we all know Henry VIII, he started off as a good king and, through time, jousting, accident, blah, 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 he became quite a tyrant. But does this show us another insight into Henry's personality? Because he's got this guy here, this guy served him loyally for 14, 15 years.
Yeah.
Henry's well aware of the rules of the church when it comes to divorce and everything. So Henry knows that saying to Wolsey, look, I want a divorce, it is putting him in an impossible decision. So does this give us a wee insight to say that Henry really didn't give us stuff?
Yeah.
Who he upset? Yeah. Did he not maybe take 5 minutes and reflect, maybe, well, this guy's been good to me and I can't put him in this position because I know I'm giving him an impossible task. But he still went ahead and did it. And he kept on and on and on at Wolsey, as I say, for over 2 years. And that must have broke him down as well.
Yeah. Yeah, you just imagine the pressure that Cardinal Wolsey was under. He was really senior in the Catholic Church, but he was also representing Henry VIII in court, the King of England. And he was... He was put in an impossible position, wasn't he?
So you need to think, what was Henry's frame of mind? Obviously he wanted Anne Boleyn. She was there. He wanted Anne Boleyn.
Yeah.
And he wasn't really caring about his 21, 22 years of marriage to Catherine. Plus, don't forget, as we said before, Catherine wasn't just an ordinary woman. So she goes... You okay? You all right, baby girl?
You're right. Oh, bless her. Are you all right, Tiami?
Bear with me. You trip over your feet.
Is she okay?
You all right? Does he need amputation? Aye, she's very serious. This is all laminated. So it's...
Oh, bless her. So she slipped on it.
You all right?
Does she need a kiss from her daddy?
Do you need a hug? You need a hug. She's getting up.
Oh, bless her.
She's upright.
There she is. There she is. Oh, bless her. Are you all right, Tiami?
You all right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so like, out of 10, how sore was it?
1,000.
A 5?
9,000.
A 5's no good. Anything less than a 5's a waste of time.
9,000.
9,000.
5,000. God
That's
bless
what
her
we say.
heart.
Anything less than a 5's a waste of time. You know, it's going to be 5 and above on the pain level. No,
God bless her.
she's fine.
Good.
Aye, so what were we saying?
I think we were just saying what a difficult position that Cardinal Wolsey was put in, because he was so senior in the Catholic Church, but he was also the senior advisor to Henry VIII, who wanted Anne Boleyn. And like you said, he would have done anything to get Anne Boleyn, which is why I think he was happy to drop Cardinal Wolsey and send him on his way, because he just wanted Anne Boleyn. So if it meant breaking away from the Catholic Church, which he did, that's what he was going to do, wasn't he?
I was determined. It didn't really matter. He was determined one way or other he was going to have Anne. And so, you know, Henry, he wasn't a stupid man. He was a very intelligent man, you know. And so he knew the rules, the laws, etc., inside out.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
to me, it was quite selfish. You know, because he didn't really care who he threw under the bus.
No, he didn't. Absolutely. He was the king. He could do anything. He could have anybody he wanted. He could have anything he wanted, and he didn't care who he hurt to get there, did he?
No,
It makes you wonder if he was connected emotionally, doesn't it? You know how some people in this life now are detached from their emotions. They're we would call them slightly psychopathic, wouldn't we? It makes you wonder if Henry was like that, the way he could just, like you say, throw people under the bus. Maybe he didn't have emotional connections to people.
No, well, I probably, you know, that is very possible. And as I say, we was talking to say about Catherine as well. I mean, she wasn't just anybody. She, you know, a lot of connections, a lot of really strong connections. And she was part of the, you know, was her cousin, her nephew was the emperor.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, that's that. You know, she wasn't exactly small, and Henry would have known the waves that would have caused with him divorcing.
Yeah.
You know, he would have knew the ripples that would have sent through everything, and the alliances he would have lost through this divorce.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And Catherine of Aragon was such a strong lady and had stuck by him for, you know, over 20 years, hadn't she?
22 years, I think they were married.
Yeah. And so to think that he was prepared to give her up, to go against the Catholic Church, to drop Cardinal Wolsey, all because of Anne Boleyn, this woman who'd come on and come in front of him and kind of seduced him. He just wanted her, and because she made herself slightly unavailable, obviously he wanted her more. So I think he was just prepared to get rid of anybody that stood in his way, including the Catholic Church and Cardinal Wolsey.
Do you think it was an ego thing as well? Because you know, he's Henry, he's the king. He can have any person he wants, but then there's this woman that he cannot have. And people would have known, you know, people in the council in his court would have known that Anne had says to him, you know, no, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And so this is a big blow to Henry's ego, because he probably was sitting there thinking, you know, knowing that these people know, and that maybe he's not the man that everybody thinks he is. So this might have fueled it as well. But, you know, I need to have this woman because everybody will think, you know, I'm a failure or whatever, and I'm the king. That can't happen. I mean, I might be wrong. I'm just saying, you know, from his point of view, you know, when Anne was saying, no, it's, you know, you make me queen, that's the bottom line.
Yeah.
And that would have been, right, Anne was only wife number 2. But that's probably one of the few times in history that's actually happened. You know, that a woman's knocked back a king, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
You know, so it wasn't exactly an everyday event, you know, saying no to the king. And, you know, Henry would have known this as well, but to me it was a very, you know, psychotic, psychopath, maybe disengaged from his emotional
It
side.
makes you wonder, doesn't it? When you think about it, you think about the friends and the wives that he had that were close to him, and how he could suddenly turn on them and just disconnect from them totally, and basically have them murdered. And he didn't seem to. Okay, he might have done a couple of times. We've talked about this before, but he didn't seem to have a conscience about it. He just kind of moved on to the next one.
I think the only one that he had a conscience about, was actually Anne Boleyn.
Yeah, you're probably right. Yeah.
Because after, as you say, he went through all this hassle of her becoming his wife as queen,
Yeah.
and then I think she was queen for like 3 years. And then,
that's it.
the stories came out. Henry turned immediately, rather than sit down and say, right, well, wait a wee minute here.
You just
Rather
didn't
than
want to
listen
know,
to
did you?
Anne's side of it, he listened to everybody else, and then he had her executed.
I know.
He just wanted the road, and I think that shows one big thing. Again, we've spoken about this before. One big giveaway is we all know Anne was, she was tried in her absence.
Yeah.
And the swordsman for Calais, I think this is one of the biggest things that a lot of people still talk about this, about when, the time between Anne's trial and their execution, and the time that they took the swordsman to travel from Calais to London, that the swordsman had already been ordered before the trial.
I know. That's quite shocking, isn't it?
Yeah.
So whatever was going to happen, she was going to lose her
Henry
head.
that ordered it.
Yeah.
So in Henry's mind, she's done, she's finished, I want her out the road, I'm going to order a swordsman, have a wee trial for her, because we need to, but she's done. And as you say, he just detached himself.
Yeah, very easily. And if you think about it, if you think about Cardinal Wolsey and his power and his position, not only in court, but in the country, to fall from grace, that probably did break his spirit, didn't it? When you think about it, it probably did really kill him. It killed his soul, his spirit, whatever. So maybe he did die just through, falling from grace. It must have hit him so hard, having wealth and power and position, to then having nothing. That must have been awful, mustn't it?
He just basically lost the will to live, and again, conscience-wise, Henry wouldn't have bothered. And it was, Henry's conscious with Anne, because we know that after she was, well, for the records, we know after she was executed, he started to doubt everything.
Yeah.
He regretted having her executed.
Yeah.
But obviously by then it was too late. But it was after that he started to question his counsel and all the rest of it, and then he realised that she was in fact innocent.
Yeah.
But by that time, Jane Seymour was on the scene.
Yeah, he got the next one lined up, hadn't he? But what do you think? So obviously, poor Cardinal Wolsey, because you kind of do feel sorry for him when you hear his story, dying at age 57, not knowing whether he died at his own hand, whether he died of a broken heart, broken spirit, or whether somebody did poison him. How do you think King Henry VIII felt when he learnt that Cardinal Wolsey had died? Do you think that had an impact on him at all?
See, that's a hard one to say, because for what we're hearing and reading and stuff, it did have a lot of concern for people. But I think silently, privately, it would have had a big impact, because this guy had been a big part of his life for 14, 15 years. It helped him out in so many ways, So I think inside, it would have had impacted him, but I don't think he would have showed it in public, because then it could have been seen as a weakness. So I think it would have to impact him somehow.
Yeah, I think so. I think it would have done, because he inherited Wolsey, didn't he? When his father died and he became king, Wolsey was already part of the court, so he'd been there from the get-go. He'd been such a strong support for Henry VIII. So to hear that he died, And to hear that he had died, I think it must have had some impact on him. Like you say, even if he couldn't show it in public, I think it must have affected him.
I don't think he would have showed it in public because,
Mm.
one, it would have been seen, how can I put it? Not a failure, but as a weakness,
Yeah, definitely.
and all the king's got feelings, And then the second reason, because he probably wouldn't want to admit that he was wrong,
Yeah. Yeah.
because what king's going to stand up and say, right, I made a mistake,
I know.
Even
So
with Anne, he knew he'd made a mistake, but he never actually
Mm.
publicly came out and said it.
No, that's it. He couldn't,
know.
could he? Because like you said, that would show as a weakness or a failure or admitting that he'd made a mistake. So I don't believe that he could have done, really.
No, but I
So
think it would have impacted him to some extent, but he'd have
Yeah.
kept it to himself. He might have told his very, very close friend, but that would have been it, really.
yeah.
Just
So
my opinion.
So sadly, as we say, he died. We're not sure how, at age 57. So we say that's not very old. However, back then he had lived quite a life. He'd studied hard, he'd worked hard, he'd held a high place in the country, and then sadly died, kind of almost an unknown and wanting to be forgot. People wanted to forget about him, or King Henry VIII certainly wanted to forget about him. But I think later on he was remembered for a symbol of clerical wealth and ambition. That's how people think of him, as this very charming and charismatic character who always wore the regalia and always looked the part. His downfall actually paved the way for Thomas Cromwell. I know we're not going to talk about Thomas Cromwell tonight, but Cardinal Wolsey kind of nurtured Thomas Cromwell, and we'll save another session to talk about him because he kind of stepped up quite a lot. But in a moment, we are obviously going to talk about the other Thomas More. And he'd actually encouraged Thomas Cromwell into court and taught him quite a lot. And he had grand designs for his own burial as well, Cardinal Wolsey. He had grand designs for a burial at St George's Chapel in Windsor Castle. But in reality, he was buried at Leicester Abbey in an unmarked grave. And then sadly, along came the dissolution of the monasteries, and that was destroyed. So today, Abbey Park in Leicester has a stone marking the approximate site of his burial. So he is remembered very humbly in Abbey Park in Leicester today. This is Cardinal Wolsey. And he is said, you'll talk about the paranormal side of it, I'm sure, but he is said to haunt Hampton Court Palace because this is somewhere, as we said earlier, that he designed, he loved, he built himself, and he lost it to Henry VIII. He gifted it to Henry VIII, but we know he wouldn't have wanted to. So he is said to have been reported to have been seen there in some hauntings in his full regalia as he was when he was in court.
Yeah, because you say, that basically that was his baby, basically.
Yeah, it was, absolutely.
And he probably regretted so much having to, give it up, but to save his own neck, basically.
Yeah.
And so to me, there is a good chance that he will still be there.
Yeah. Yeah,
As
absolutely. Because as we've said before, we would like to think that if you are going to haunt somewhere, you go back to the places that you loved.
Well, that's it. And to me, that was his happy place for that the length of time that he owned it.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
Is he there because that was his happy place, or is he there because maybe he's still hoping to get it back?
Yeah, that's it. You don't know, do you? You don't know.
But you feel sorry for Wolsey, but was he the victim of his own?
Yeah.
Was he the master of his own undoing?
And and it's interesting you say that, because I think before his death, before he was even thrown out of court, I think he realised his misgivings, because he was portrayed as confessing his sins and saying to God that I know I have not served you well, I have not done what I've supposed to have done. So I think he was aware of his own misgivings, and maybe he knew that his demise was coming, so he was asking God for forgiveness.
He probably did have an idea that his demise was coming, but maybe he thought it was going to come on the scaffold.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know.
We'll, yeah. And we'll never know really, will we, what happened to him? That's the sad thing. Most people, we know what happened to them in his history, but we don't know whether he was poisoned, whether he took his own life. We will never really know that. So it's down to people's personal thoughts, isn't it, really?
So what was your personal thoughts? Do you think he was poisoned, or do you think he just succumbed to his illnesses? Or
I personally
he just
feel
lost the will to live, basically?
I personally feel that he just was fearful of his fate, obviously, once he'd fallen from grace, but I believe that his spirit was probably broken and he probably just faded away. You know, when people give up, they pass over. And I feel like maybe if he was on his way to be charged with treason and he knew that, maybe that shock was enough to kill him off when he was already weak and already ill.
No, that's a good point, because obviously he was on his way to London. He knew he was going to be charged with treason, so he knew the chances of him coming back were 0 to 0.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
because for him to be charged with treason, obviously the evidence had been found and drummed up. You know,
Yeah.
and there was
Yeah.
only one penalty for treason, obviously, back then. So he probably was in the frame of mind, you know, I'm going to London to die, basically.
Yeah. So he was another huge personality in the Tudor era, wasn't he? Somebody that will always be talked about, will always be able to visualize him, like you said, because of being portrayed in various things. But Sam Neill particularly portrayed him well, I feel. And that's kind of
Aye.
how we will picture him, that charismatic, that charming, vivacious character in all his regalia. I think we will always remember Cardinal Wolsey because he was such an important person to Henry VIII and in court, wasn't he?
It was. He's one of. I mean, there was a lot of people in Henry's court, you know, and there was a lot of big, you know, main sort of characters over the years. Some, you know, stayed throughout Henry's reign, but Wolsey does seem to stick out.
Yeah, he really did. But then somebody else who was kind of quietly in the background for a little while is the next person that we'll move on to, is Sir Thomas More. Now, I don't know about you, Scott, but he's one of my particular favourites from reading about him, from seeing his character portrayed in various documentaries or dramas on the Tudors. There is something very endearing about Thomas More. So he was born on the 7th of February. We know a little bit more about the details here. He was born on the 7th of February, 1478, and his father was a judge. And he also studied at Magdalen College in Oxford, interestingly. So big up the Magdalen College in Oxford that I know and I've worked and I love. And then he went to Lincoln's Inn in London. And he became a brilliant lawyer. He was such a good scholar. He was a statesman and he was also a devout Catholic. And in 1505 to 1511, he married his true love, a lady called Jane Colt. She sadly died very young. They had 4 children, but she sadly died very, very young. And he was very heartbroken. But it was very important back then for people of some standing to be married. So in 1511 to 1535, he married a lady called Alice Middleton. Now, this was a lady who was a wealthy widow herself with 1 daughter. And this marriage was a marriage of mutual respect. So it wasn't like the love that he had for his first wife, but it was a very much a mutual respect. They were both widowed, they had children, and they joined their households together. Now, his household was very loving. They had daily prayers. He was very hot on education, and he really encouraged his daughters to be equally well educated as his sons, which, as we know, again, back then, that was very unusual because the boys, the sons were pushed forwards to do well, and the girls stayed at home, kept the house, became housewives, whatever. But he was really, really prominent in pushing education for his girls as well as his sons. And then in 1517, he entered the royal service and became advisor to King Henry VIII. And he was aged around 40 when he was in court. So his achievements in 1521, he was knighted, excuse me, and he was made under treasurer of the Exchequer. And in 1523, he became Speaker of the House of Commons. And then in 1529, he succeeded Cardinal Wolsey as Lord Chancellor. This was the highest judicial office in England. So he really worked his way up very differently to Cardinal Wolsey because he was a very humble, a very kind, a very caring man. He wasn't the big showman and the flashy person to everybody. He was very kind, very nurturing. He was deeply committed to both justice and faith. Excuse me. But, however, having said that, his kind and gentle nature, because he was quite a humanist as well, he did very aggressively persecute the heretics, mainly Protestants, because he was a devout Catholic. So, you know, at his hand, a lot of people got executed, were beheaded, were burnt at the stake. So it's not all roses about Sir Thomas More, as nice as he comes across. And he was actually very much a writer. He was a scholar, he was a writer, and he wrote the work Utopia in 1516, which is a fictional account of an ideal society. And he was influenced in, and he was a very good friend with Erasmus, who was a Dutch scholar in the Renaissance era, and he took on a lot of his ideas. So in 1530, with Henry's great matter of Catherine of Aragon, things became very, very difficult for yet another close advisor of Henry, because Henry was also very good friends with Sir Thomas More, and I think he liked his quiet, unassuming nature, and the fact that he was such a different personality to Cardinal Wolsey. So they were also very, very close. But this again put him in such a difficult position because he didn't want to go along with Catherine of Aragon getting divorced, Henry divorcing Catherine of Aragon, should I say. He couldn't go against his faith. He couldn't go against the Catholics. He tried to stay silent about this situation. He didn't want to get involved. He almost took a step back. He tried to stay silent. He tried to resign quietly, but Henry wouldn't have any of it. And in 1534, Parliament passed the Act of Supremacy and the signing of the oath to acknowledge Henry of the head of the church. And More absolutely refused to sign this oath, believing that the Pope to be the head of the church and that nobody else could take over. And sadly, that kind of sealed his fate. So he was imprisoned in the Tower of London. So I'll let you take over because I know you know a bit about him, Scott. And obviously this was quite a long time. This period was a long time happening as well, wasn't it?
It was. I mean, people talk about the Tudor era and they think it's just a couple of years, but it was decades and decades, you know. But
Exactly.
I mean, Thomas More, as you say, he was a very strong, staunch Catholic. He believes very, very strongly in his religion. I mean, you watch the Tudors, you know, whether it's actually true or not, there are some scenes where it's just him and Henry together, and you know he's calling him Harry and stuff like that, and you think, well, were they really that close in real life? You know, did he actually educate Henry when he was younger? Because there is a few mentions in the Tudors. I'm not basing everything on the Tudors. It's just that he actually taught Henry when Henry was, you know, a teenager, basically, kind of thing. But as you say, the Act of Supremacy, the oath came out, and we all know what troubles that caused, you know, up and down the country. Even Henry's own daughter, Mary. You know, she was a very, very strong Catholic, as was her mum. And she was even, you know, in a way, roundabout way, threatened with execution if she didn't sign it. You know, but I mean,
exactly.
Thomas, I felt sorry for Thomas, but at the same time, the guy had his beliefs, you know, and as you said, everybody thinks he was an angel, you know, this great guy. But there was the other side to him with the heretics and what have you, and he burned and, you know, beheaded quite a lot of them. So he did have that kind of evil streak about him. But Henry held him in high regard. Again,
he did.
You know, he held him in high regard, and then when he was asked to sign the oath, he refused. People were begging him.
I know.
And he was in the Tower for quite some time.
He was, and his family
And
was sent to go and see him, to plead with him, because even
yeah,
Henry didn't want to lose him. I believe he really didn't want to lose to Thomas More. He was desperate for him to sign the oath. So even sending his family, his children, his wife, pleading with him, please just sign it. We need you. Save your own life. And he wouldn't.
he wouldn't.
He
And then
wouldn't, because
again,
his need to serve God was greater than signing this oath. And he didn't want to go against everything that he'd been taught in his religion.
Laura saying, doesn't everyone have that ego streak about them? And some, I suppose everybody does, you know.
Right.
And as you say, you know, Henry wanted them to sign. And then just jump back to what we were saying about, you know, Lawrence mentioned about the ego as well. You know, Henry didn't want to lose this guy,
Yeah.
but he would have been, I mean, he'd already threatened so many people, including his own daughter, with execution if they didn't sign the oath. So now
Yeah.
he's got this guy locked up in the tower. I see you're watching. Laura was kidding earlier on. She was just going to say hello and then go back to her knitting and crocheting. But you know, she's still there.
Bless her.
I was saying, aye. So you know, Henry, he's got the oath sitting there. He's threatened X amount of people, own daughter, sign this or you'll be executed, basically, because
Yeah.
it's treason.
Yeah.
You know. And then
Yeah.
he's got this guy, a close friend that he's known for years, locked up in the tower, who's refusing to sign it. Henry doesn't want to execute him.
No, I know. It's so
But
difficult.
the other side of the fence, again, is if he doesn't execute him, he's going to be seen as soft. People are going to start saying, well, what makes him so special?
Yeah.
Why
I
can
know.
he not? You know, how's he getting away with no signing this, but the rest of the country are getting butchered if they don't sign it?
Yeah.
So I don't think
Such a difficult
Henry
situation.
had much of a choice.
But
And
the interesting thing is, Scott, that he was in the Tower of London in prison for quite a long time, as we know. But he'd almost resigned himself to the fact that he was going to be executed, whether he didn't know at this time whether he'd be burnt, whether he'd be beheaded. But he had kind of, unlike Cardinal Wolsey, who was absolutely terrified, this man resigned himself because he
he
loved
was
God so
ready.
much. He was ready to die for his God. He didn't want to
You
put
know,
anything in front of that. So, and he was very peaceful and had a lovely demeanor about him. So he was very accepting. And I think his family found that so difficult because several times they went to the tower, as we said, to plead with him because we're your family, we love you, we need you. And he just said no, he just couldn't do it. He
do
couldn't
you think?
betray his love of God.
I think that, and also about your opinion on this, Tracy. I mean, he was in there for, as you say, he was in there for quite some time, you know, and
Mm,
his family, everybody went to visit him, you know.
yeah.
Henry could have ordered his execution at any time, you know, after a
Yeah.
week, a month. He could say, no,
Yeah.
you know what, enough's enough. But the fact that he was in there so long, do you think that Henry was stalling as much as he could
I believe so.
in the hope that Thomas would see sense and think, right, it's only a bit of paper, I'm going to sign it.
Yeah, I truly believe that. I don't believe that Henry wanted to execute him. I think he wanted to give him time to come to his senses in the tower. Um, exactly that, so that he would sign the oath. But of course, he wouldn't, even with his own family pleading, he just wouldn't do it.
And then his Henry's, you know, finally realised after months and months, you know,
Yeah,
this guy's not going to budge. So he
yeah,
only, you know, I'm left with one one road to go down. I think to me it's an extraordinary act. I think to me that's an extraordinary act of not only courage but also faith to his God. His
yeah,
beliefs are paramount, even if it's going to cost him. That's exactly right. His beliefs were paramount. He also he
yeah,
loved his family.
yeah,
You know, he didn't want to leave them, etc.
yeah.
But his religion played, and I mean, religion played a massive part in
It
everybody's
really
life back
did.
then. You know,
It really did back in that era, not just the Tudor era, but prior to that. But it so did. They would put God before their own life. They were prepared to die for God, for
mm-hmm.
in the name of Jesus Christ, weren't they? So sadly, he was imprisoned, and as you say, Scott, that it was almost like Henry VIII was stalling to give him time to come to his senses. But unfortunately, it didn't happen. And on the In 1535, he was tried for treason and he was to be beheaded. So on the 6th of July in 1535, aged 57, which is really bizarre because that was the age
Because
that Cardinal
Wolsey.
Wolsey was. So they died at the same age. So he died from beheading. But he did say to the executioner, he was so brave, he just did not fear death. And he said to the executioner, "Be not afraid to do thine office." And his final words were, "I die the king's good servant, but God's first." And that just absolutely sums him up, doesn't it? You know, he was, and I have got the year right this time. So it is 1935.
1935.
1935, it took all that time for the Catholic Church to recognise him as a saint. So in 1935, he was finally canonised by the Catholic Church and recognised as a saint, believed to be a martyr of conscience and religious freedom. And lots of places are named after him, lots of schools, lots of churches. And his book Utopia that we mentioned earlier, it remains quite an influential work of politics and philosophy in literature today. People still do read it. And I actually didn't know this until I was doing my research, Scott. I didn't realise that the play and the film A Man for All Seasons is based around his moral integrity and tragic stand against tyranny. Now, I didn't know that that was about Sir Thomas More. So, A Man for All Seasons was based around him. Now, he's buried at the Chapel of St. Peter in the Tower of London. Again, quite a simple unmarked grave because he was shamed from court. And he is said to haunt the Tower of London, but also he haunts, allegedly, Chelsea Old Church, which was his parish.
Right.
So I don't know if you know anything about his hauntings at all, but those are the areas that he's said to haunt.
You see, the thing is, in the Tudors, it shows him being executed within the walls of the tower.
Yeah.
But we all know that he wasn't, because he wasn't royalty.
No.
You know, it was only royalty that was executed within in the walls.
Yeah.
But it's, how can I put it? It's, again, it shows Henry's sort of evil streak.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, as we just discussed, Cardinal Wolsey, Henry gave him an impossible task, regardless of Wolsey's beliefs and all the rest of it. Henry wanted this done.
Yeah.
Then we get Thomas More. Henry wanted him to sign it. Henry knew this guy inside out. He knew how strong his beliefs were. And he wanted him to sign this oath, not that so Henry could marry some other woman, just so that Henry could be declared, you know, everybody would see, I'm Henry, I'm the head of the church.
Yeah.
So he was willing to kill this guy, basically, that he'd known many years. And, you know, rather than just keep, I mean, to make, what do you think? Yeah, he could have kept him imprisoned in the tower.
Yeah.
Rather than execute him. But then, would that have been seen as a weakness if he hadn't executed him?
That's the trouble. I mean, that's the trouble, isn't it? King Henry VIII almost had to carry out all of these orders for charges of treason because he had to be consistent. If he did, like you said earlier, if he hadn't have killed one person and then killed another, he would have lost his respect. People wouldn't have respected him. They wouldn't have feared him. So he kind of had to stick to his morals, but it was so brutal, as we said before, back in that time, wasn't it? And the amount of people that died at the hands of, not the direct hands, but because of the orders of Henry VIII in the Tudor era. It was sad and tragic, really.
The estimate is, they reckon it's about 72,000 people.
And that's just shocking, isn't it? That's so shocking.
You know, and that was, you know, behead, whatever way you're beheading, whatever way they were executed. And Henry, 72,000 people were executed.
Yeah.
You know, Godwin's in Charles, who puts your God before family, shows immense faith in his God. He was willing to give his family his life for his God. How faithful a servant of God.
Yeah.
Laura's right, but then, I mean, what would you do? You know, you've got a very, very strong, ironclad faith in God. But then you've got your family, your wife and your daughters there begging you to sign it.
I know.
You think, you know, you're going to leave your wife and daughter behind.
I know.
You know?
It's crazy, isn't it? Because if you think, if we were given that option now, if we just had to sign a piece of paper in this lifetime to save our lives and stay with our family, I would say 99.9 people would sign that piece of paper. But back then, religion, God, Jesus Christ was so important to those people that they would die for their faith, and so many of them did. They would willingly die. They would willingly go to their death to keep their faith and their belief in God, and to not be forced to change their beliefs and their religion. It very, very different times then, wasn't it?
It was very, as you say, there's a bit, I've missed a bit of comments, so start that again. That was in 2 parts, that one. I read the second part, see the first. I think another thing you need to remember here is that no matter who was in charge at that point, his faith came first. His beliefs were so paramount and meant so much to him, i.e. God, and only God was in charge. To put your God before family, etc., shows immense faith in his God. He was willing to give his family his life for his God. How faithful a servant of God. Laura's right, but religion played a major, major part. And
hugely.
Look at Mary, when, always going to we'll talk about her in a future show, but she went to town.
Yeah. Terrible. She was known as Bloody Mary, wasn't she, when she came into power? She
just didn't hold back. She slaughtered thousands. And that's how, as you just said, she got the name Bloody Mary. Because she did. She tried to wipe them out.
Yeah. A lot of that, I think, was revenge for her mother's death, wasn't it? Her mother died of a broken heart, basically, didn't she? And she never forgave her father for doing what he did to her mother, Catherine of Aragon. And so we feel like a lot of Mary's revenge was because of her mother.
And then the other thing with Thomas is Henry never gave a thought to what the implications would be of executing Thomas More.
Yeah.
Because he was, as you say, he was a highly, again, he was like Wolsey, he was highly respected, he had a lot of connections, etc.
Yeah.
But Henry just didn't care.
I know. And it's so sad, isn't it? And when you think of Cardinal Wolsey and Sir Thomas More, they both died at the hands of Henry VIII, and they were both close, very, very close confidants of Henry VIII, but they were such different characters. You had the bolshy, cocky, confident, charismatic Cardinal Wolsey, and then you had the quiet, humble, unassuming, sophisticated Sir Thomas More. They were so different, weren't they? One of them went totally fearfully and probably died from a broken spirit. The other one went to their death willingly. Such different characters. It's quite fascinating, isn't it, when you think about it?
It is fascinating because one was a victim of his own, like he put it, I was going to say his own undoing. He was a master of his own undoing with Wolsey. But Thomas More, he never done anything.
No,
he died because of his faith,
I know, so sad.
Some people say, he was a victim of his faith, but he wasn't. The guy just stood up for what he believed in. Yeah. Was it the wrong decision to make? Personally, I think it was.
Yeah.
Because God is a forgiving God. I'm sure God would have understood.
Yeah.
But obviously Thomas didn't see it this way. Yeah,
that's it. It was very different then, wasn't it?
It was all heaven and hell, and you must do this, and I'm not saying that religion matters any less these days, because it doesn't, but it just wasn't. People lived and died with their religion back then, not just the Tudor era, as you said, right through the 1600s as well.
Exactly.
Religion was a major part in people's lives, and then it started to kind of not relax, but people started, well, there's more to life than this. We still love God, we still like to worship Him, but we want to do this.
Do we ever learn anything though, Scott? Because when you think about it, most wars during this lifetime are to do with religion and politics. So have we really learned anything over the centuries? I don't know that we really have we?
No, not really.
When you
I
think
don't think
that's
we'll
what
ever.
most wars are about, aren't they?
I don't think we'll ever learn.
No,
You know.
sadly. But yeah, still, like we say, larger than life characters from the Tudor era will always stand out. They were all such individual characters, and they all seem to have the same fate, which is really sad and really tragic. But I think that's what will keep us talking about them for years and years to come. And I think Henry VIII must have had a soft spot for Thomases, mustn't he? Because it was Thomas Wolsey, Thomas More. We briefly mentioned Thomas Cromwell, who we'll talk about in another one. And then, of course, there was Thomas Cranmer as well. So there were a lot of Thomases in court that were very, very important. At least four.
It was quite. And if you watch the Tudors, there's another Thomas, the musician guy. He's called Thomas as well.
Thomas, was it Seaton? Oh, and there was Thomas Seymour as well, of course, wasn't there?
Yeah.
So yeah, perhaps that was a very, very common name back then, but it's quite weird that a lot of people in court were called Thomas. It must have got very confusing.
There's a lot of Thomases about.
Until one of them lost their head, and then it was less confusing.
Then it became less fashionable.
Yeah.
Right, don't call him Thomas.
Yeah, don't call us Thomas. It's not good luck.
Change his name to Trevor or something. Nigel would be safe. You know what I mean? Have you got anything more to add there?
Say that again.
So I'll say it in English. So I said that in Scottish there. Did I lose you?
You lost me there. I missed what you said.
I said that in my Scottish accent. I'll try to say it in my English. Does one have anything more to add? Does one?
One does not. I think one has covered it quite well with one's partner on the show here. Yeah, I think I've just got, probably like anybody who's interested in the Tudors, including yourself, we know all of these characters and we have our own personal thoughts and feelings over these characters. And even if they seemed a little bit of a baddie like Cardinal Wolsey, there's still a part of me that feels so compassionate towards him. But with Sir Thomas More, there was something very endearing about him. And I think he would have been a very, very lovely man, aside from all of, killing the heretics. He would have been a very, very lovely man. And I think when people knew that he was being tried for treason and executed, they would have been incredibly sad. And I think Henry VIII would have been incredibly sad about him. We're saying that we feel he was a bit maybe psychopathic and detached from his emotions, but I think he probably did feel things for certain people. And Thomas More, I think, was a great loss to him.
I tell you, it would have been a great loss. And again, he would probably have sat there after it and, in private and thought,
Yeah.
What we done? Should I maybe have gave the guy longer, or but then then the other side of that coin is how much time do you actually give him? Because Henry knew that he was not going to sign this oath even if gave him 10 years.
Yeah.
Waited 10 years, he was not. So I think basically Henry just ran out of patience and says, right, just be done with it, basically. But no, I mean the Tudor era. I mean, I know there's people out there, saying they're no fans of the Tudor era. Tudor era, no area. Been a very long day there. But I mean, it's one of the greatest eras in British history, and it's such an impact on how we live our lives today. And you've got to think to yourself, I mean, you the medieval times, you've all these different eras, but it's like the Pendle witch trials, that was 1612. There was other witch trials, but the Pendle witch trials are the ones that seem still to be on and on about to this day. Same as the Tudor era, you had the Victorian era, Edwardian, blah blah blah, but the Tudor era seems to capture people's imagination.
Stands out. It really stands out,
and there's still documentaries getting made about it, even though they've been getting made for decades. People are still making documentaries about it. They're still talking about Henry VIII, what he did. He did some good things, at his time, but I think the majority of them are kind of bad things, And it's, I mean, I said this way months and months ago. I mean, obviously I'm from Glasgow, and you get Rangers and Celtic. Aye. Did I never tell you that? Aye. Where do you think I was feeling? Whitley Bay or Cornwall or something? Plymouth. No. But when I lived in Glasgow, your Rangers and Celtic, I'm into football, but I relatives, ex-relatives, they were, sort of Catholic, some are Protestant, and they used to hate each other. And I used to say, why do you hate each other? I said, because he's a Catholic.
I know.
So, but why?
So sad.
And so I'd say to a couple of them, do you know why you have Catholics and Protestants? Because it's religion. I said, but why? How did it come about?
Exactly.
And see, when you tell them,
they believe in the same God, it's just a different way of believing in that God, isn't it?
Aye. And see, when you tell them, well, Catholics and Protestants came about because a guy fell in love with a woman, basically. What do you mean? And so you tell them, you don't give them a big history lesson, but you give them I didn't know that. I say, so that's the reason you hate him. Because somebody fell out with, somebody wanted a second wife. Basically, I mean, it might sound stupid, but when you think back, that's where it all started.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. It's a crazy world. It always has been, and it always will be, I think, won't it, with politics and religion?
Okay, as long as there's English people have always been there she goes again.
Tell her to walk carefully.
Aye. Just take your time on your return journey, baby girl. Walk or crawl.
Walk slowly, Tiami.
Crawl so you're nearer to the floor.
Bless her.
How's that? So her hair kind of stands out. Seems she's standing behind the bald man. She did her first. I don't know if you did watch it. She did her first podcast last week.
I said then. I've turned a bit native. Yes, I did. I did watch it because I had little conversations with her, so it was lovely to see.
No,
she did so well. She was brilliant.
I know she's been taught by the best.
Absolutely. I think you've lost your job. She's going to step in soon.
Well, that's what we were saying after. I think I'm going to be made redundant now because you get another one on the 28th.
Oh, fantastic.
Because she says earlier on the day, when's my next show?
Oh,
big superstar down there, when's my next show?
Bless her.
It's on the 20th. So you're going to be roped in as a guest as well, by the way.
Okay.
Because
that's no problem.
We're going to make it a regular thing.
Oh, that would be lovely. That'd be lovely to see her.
She enjoys doing it, and we're not shoving her into it. We're just, just want to take it at our own pace.
Yeah, absolutely.
She seems to be coming along quite nicely. So maybe
she did a good job when I watched her the other day. She did a damn good job.
We're all very proud of her. So maybe in a couple of months' time, I'll be redundant. You'll be seeing her sitting here all the time instead of me. Yeah.
You'll be handing over your crown.
That crown's away. I think they've broken it to hold it on with the tape at the back. But we won't, fingers on lips, we won't talk about that. So, I quite enjoyed our wee chat tonight. I hope everybody else did.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I hope we haven't sent people to sleep, but I really enjoyed it, Scott. It's lovely to talk about the Tudors and to bring these different characters to life again. Because when you read about them, it's different to talking about them, isn't it? It's lovely to talk about them and describe them, and it really brings them to life.
And because I was really we're trying to educate people, but there's a lot of people there, when we take Lady Rochford, for instance, she's not spoken with that. If you go up to somebody and you say, do you know who Anne Boleyn is? Oh, do you know who Lady Rochford was? Who?
Exactly. So we are educating people.
It's, and, these people played, may not been a major significant part, but they still, Lady Rochford, she'd quite a wee hand in with Catherine Howard and what have you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We mentioned her
and don't forget she was George Boleyn's widow.
Yeah.
Because also he was executed.
So many characters, like you say, on the periphery, on the sidelines that we've mentioned that people might not have heard of, but they did play a big part. And
I think it's important to bring them up.
Yeah, definitely.
And we might not get it all right, because we might not be able to find a lot written about different individuals, you know.
Yeah.
But we can but do what we can.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's the right way to say it. Is it? That's the right way to say it. So we're going to wind up here, but where can people find you, Tracey? Don't say your mum's house.
Yeah, mum's house at the moment. Yeah, on Facebook, Tarot Tracey, and if they can't find me directly, they'll find me in your friends list. I'm on Paranormal in History list. I'm on your list, aren't I, Scott? So they'll find me if they want to look me up. They'll find me there.
So give this lady a wee look up, because you see she's quite interesting and knowledgeable, and she's staying with her mum. No, until her new house is built.
The roof is on. Do you know
The
what?
roof's on.
From this house, Scott, bungalow mum's in, I can look across the fields and I can see my house in the distance, or the area where it is, and the roof is on. The roof's on already. Apparently, when the roof is on, it's halfway.
I've always found that's an important thing, a roof on a house.
Yeah, and it's been built during the summer, which means it's been a nice dry summer. So it should be a good dry house. That's what we like. We don't want houses built in the winter, really, do we?
No, I did try and follow. Yes, and we do appreciate that. Warren says I did try and follow. No, I mean the houses we're in, these are still class. We've been in here 2 years next month.
Yeah.
So our kind of wee estate, it's kind of weird. Laura, she's 2 minutes away from us, but the way they put these houses is, it's kind of like there's a scheme. You know what a scheme is, don't you?
A scheme?
You know what a scheme is? A housing scheme.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
A housing area.
Yeah.
And then we're kind of like separate from them.
Okay.
It's more like, Sarah describes it, this place looks like an army camp.
Yeah.
You know, and she's right, because in Edinburgh, at Dreadcorn, Dreadcorn's an area in Edinburgh, there's an army barracks, a big, massive army barracks, but there's army houses that sit away separate from them. And they look like these. They're kind of just, they're there, but they're out the way.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So when they built these houses, these weren't built here. These houses were built in a factory.
Oh, wow, really?
These are modular houses. So
that's what they do in Germany, isn't it?
Yeah, each room was built in a factory.
Wow.
And then transported here on a truck, then lifted in by a crane. And then also the outside walling was built, you know, up around it, but the actual majority of this house was built in a factory.
Well, I never.
So they kind of, I think that's how they put them up so quick.
Yeah, could be. Well, I must tell you, interestingly, the house I'm going to that's now got the roof on, that area of housing. I mean, there are lots of houses going up there, and it's the next village along from this one where I live. It used to be an American RAF base. So it was known as Little America because lots of Americans used to be here. And when I was a kid living in this village where I've come back to, I remember the F-111 jets flying over all the time. Well, they obviously left in the 90s, and now they've made it into new houses. But there's a lot of history there to do with the Cold War and also to do with the First World War. So I think it'll be quite an interesting place to be because there's a heritage centre, tells you all about the history, and you can do a bus tour and go around they've kept some of the buildings because obviously they're listed. So it's quite an interesting place where I'm going to. So I'm quite looking forward to it.
I bet there's a lot of activity there as well.
Yeah, exactly. So I think I might be doing my own little investigations there. That would be
good to see. See, Laura's saying it was a field where Scott's house is. It's weird. It's part of the community, but it's not.
Okay.
It's a weird one.
I get what you mean. Yeah, I get what you mean. You're kind of on the edge.
Aye, I've been on the edge for years, though. Trust me. The houses.
On the edge. Anyway, we better go. We better get some beauty sleep.
I know. So I'll keep a hold of you just after we come off anyway, dog. So a massive thanks to this young lady, Tracey. We'll be seeing her again. Sorry. It's been a very long day, all right? We will be seeing her again when we cover our next two people who have yet to decide who this. I know who the next one is, but we need another one. And we'll be back on Monday with the wee one. She's doing her second show. She's
Oh,
got
lovely. I shall
Emma.
tune into that.
She's got Emma and Rosie for the Ghoul Gang coming on. And
Lovely.
who's your other guest?
Rigger.
Sorry, Rigger. Spike.
Oh, Rigger. Lovely.
They'll
Oh,
be
I shall
on.
look out for that. I shall enjoy watching that.
All right, make a note. Monday, 8 p.m.
Monday. And you've got to make sure that you walk behind her and slip over.
Tracey, I need to walk behind you and fall over. No, I just got the kind of what you talk. You know that look your kids give you. You know, if you come in with a paper hat on or something. Like, what? But we're going to wind up there, folks. So thanks for watching, and we hope you enjoyed our little chat. And we'll see you in the next Tudor series, and you'll see this lady soon as well. Cheers. Bye. Bye.
Good night.